Whether I'm at a college somewhere doing a workshop or hanging with students right here in LA, one of the questions that I'm often asked is, what does it take to have a career as a studio cellist? And what types of things should I be practicing, working on, or thinking about to prepare for that kind of life in 2025? And I have a few thoughts about this, including some ideas that I'm pretty sure none of you guys are currently working on in your practice rooms. But before I do, I want to give a quick caveat that anyone who's achieved any level of success, really in any field, is often not in the best position to give advice. In other words, we all tend to overplay how much hard work we did or how great our strategies were and underplay just dumb luck, being in the right place in the right circumstances, meeting the right connection at the right time, and often those things are equally, if not more, important. Also, in an industry like the music industry that is so fast moving with new ways to promote yourself and new things coming online every other day, any strategy that anyone gives you is likely to be outdated and ineffective. But with that in mind, I'd like to offer you a few ideas that I think will be evergreen or at the very least online with the current trends that I'm seeing today. First, let's talk about exactly what I mean when I say studio musicians. So, when we talk about studio players, there have traditionally been two buckets. And stay with me here, there's a reason why we need to talk about this first. The first bucket is the traditional orchestral player, like cellists, violinists, woodwinds, etc., etc. And these are the great readers, right, who have great time and great tone, always excellent rhythm, and are just able to sit in on scoring sessions for film, television, movies, etc. And these guys are always classically trained from the top conservatories and bringing that exact skill set to bear. The other bucket of studio musicians are the rhythm section guys, like the guitarists, keyboard, bass, and drummers. And while many of them are also amazing readers, the majority of them that get called to play sessions and are really in demand are there because they bring their own unique style and sensibility to the session, thereby enhancing the producer's vision and often coming up with funkier, groovier, and hipper ideas than the producer could come up with on their own. In other words, this second bucket is adding value in a very different way. And because the studio musician industry is being disrupted by technology in the same ways many other professions are, it's been changing rapidly. Specifically, there is a lot less work for the first bucket of traditional players. This probably started 20 years ago or more when the internet became fast enough to do remote sessions and orchestral work started leaving places like LA and New York in favor of Eastern Europe. And it became easier to stack parts, replacing an entire string section with a few solo players. Add to this the elimination of special payments and other ways that musicians were able to continually profit from the music they had played on, leading up to sample libraries continually getting better and better, and now, of course, with AI, the net result being an ever-shrinking pocket of just a few core players who are able to still eke out a good living doing this type of playing. And I consider myself at the tail end of the last generation of musicians in LA who can do that. And I can absolutely see a day coming in just a few years when I'll be sitting in the car with my kids, telling them about how incredible it was sitting in these amazing recording studios, these temples of music with the greatest sounding rooms and the best mics, with some of the world's best brass, wind, and string players who could play anything soulfully with perfect rhythm and absolutely together on the first take. And them looking at me like, why didn't they just get a computer to do that? The point is that a greater and greater percentage of the studio work that does exist is going to be happening in the second category. Even if you play a traditional orchestral instrument, the value, and probably the only value moving forward, is going to be in your ability to add some kind of special sauce to a production. Now, you still need to be an awesome reader and to be able to play with great time and great intonation with a click and all of that. That is not going to change. But there is a parallel skill set to being a studio player in 2025 that is equally important and often overlooked. So I want to give you 3 tips to help you get started, and I'll be offering a bonus one at the end of the video, so stick around for that. The first tip, and I think the most important, is to focus on developing a sensibility for modern music. So I want to give you 3 general ideas for preparing for that in a way that's practical and that I think will actually have real utility for you. First, develop your sensibility for hooks in general. Most of the genres you're going to be playing for are pop, jazz, hip-hop, rock, etc. You can do this by listening to hip-hop music and learning the hooks by ear. There's a lot of benefits there too, in that you'll be ear training every day, and of course most of the sessions you'll be playing on, the producers, composers, or other artists won't be able to read or write music. Make sure you're listening to the great string arrangers of popular music's past. I always think about Paul Buckmaster's great arrangements for Elton John in the 70s, all the way up through Drops of Jupiter, which he did for the band Train, probably the most famous string arrangement in the last 30 years. But also, and this is difficult for me as well, listening to what's happening right now on the music scene. And this is critical because the producers that you're going to be working with also have these tunes and those arrangements and productions at the front of their mind and are probably being influenced by those and want you to capture some of that magic. A lot of you guys ask me, did being able to improvise help you in your studio career? And it absolutely did, but not in the way you would think. So a lot of the time when I'm practicing for my own groups or even my own pleasure, I'm working on jazz or blues-based improvisation. No one is ever going to ask you to improvise a solo over rhythm changes or do a blues cello solo. The producers have never heard that before, so it's probably not something they're looking for. And if they wanted a solo in one of those genres with a string instrument, they'd hire a violinist. I agree that that kind of sucks. And even though I've been asked to do this on occasion, it was only after those arrangers or composers or producers had actually heard one of my videos or been to one of my shows, and it's an incredibly rare and cherished occasion. It's not something that anyone could even come close to building a career on. So what type of improvisational musical sensibilities are marketable? Well, I would suggest that most of the improvisation you'll be doing or asked to do in these sessions involve more coming up with either textures or hooks, interesting lines that can be sampled and repeated in that hip-hop tune, or maybe a little filigree or moment within the context of a bigger arrangement. And if it's not capturing a vibe based off of a hip-hop hook or famous string arrangement that we've already talked about, it'll often be in some type of world music genre. Like they may ask, can you make that lick sound a little more Bollywood and slidey? Or they might say, can you kind of do an Indian or Arabic sounding thing in this one little hook? Or can you do like a 2-second fiddly thing here in this intro? Can you play something that sounds kind of Latin? The best way to do this that I've found is to create a motive notebook for yourself of about 5 licks in genres like Arabic, Indian music, fiddle music, where you've actually transcribed master fiddle players that you found on YouTube in those styles. Write them out in 2 or 3 keys and practice them actively, paying a lot of attention to really getting the sound and the style right as it pertains to bowing, making sure the ornaments really feel good. This should be enough to get you going in adding a little bit of the spice from those different musical traditions. And don't worry that you're not a master of Indian music and you haven't practiced it for 30 years. You, the audience, and the producer doesn't care and doesn't know the difference anyway. I can think of a lot of musicians who've developed sort of fake versions of these styles and have been very, very successful as soloists for video games, pop bands, and every other type of studio work. Now for the bonus round, I want to offer you a few quick tips that I think are absolutely critical and hopefully skills that most of you guys already have. Number one, you have to have your own room to record at home. Most sessions these days are remote. And while we can make several videos about this subject, the two things I want to emphasize is first, do not worry about having the most amazing gear or the most incredible room. A great engineer can make you sound like whatever they want to, especially in the mix. And secondly, if you are going to invest at all, I would say start with investing in a little bit of basic DIY home sound treatment. It's reasonably inexpensive, and as the first part of your recording chain, other than your instrument, making small changes here gives you the biggest impact on how your recordings are going to sound. Secondly, accept that part of your gig in the 21st century as a studio musician is as an arranger. Remember we talked about studying the masters a minute ago? Whether it's being asked to stack a few cello parts in an ensemble or doing complete string arrangements, this is just a part of the gig nowadays. So make sure you've mastered Dorico or Sibelius. You're comfortable using a DAW like Pro Tools or Logic. The good news is this not only makes you more versatile, but increases the odds that you can be a leader on sessions where you contract other string players on behalf of the artist. And this is great because connections and being a great hang is no less important in 2025 than it's ever been. As a matter of fact, I would argue more so. And because a lot of people these days come up on their phones with very few social skills, it's going to be even more of a valuable commodity for you. Get off your phone and learn to talk to people. Well, I hope that gives you some ideas for getting the most out of your time and your practice if you're preparing for this type of a career in 2025. If you liked it, smash the like button, leave a comment. That really helps me share this with other people. And if you'd like a free lesson with me, click on the link below. And I'd love to share some thoughts, things I've discovered about improvisation, and some insights that I think will really change your cello playing forever. See you next time.